patience, yeah.
Yo, Z-Pack! This episode is made possible by the generous sponsorship of Athena Health. Athena Health partners with hospital and ambulatory clients to drive results. They offer network-enabled medical record, revenue cycle management, patient engagement, care coordination, and population health services to build Health 3.0. Yo, get back to the work you love doing. Athena Health. Free up. What up, Z-Pack? It's your boy, Z-Dog MD. Welcome to Sunday Against Medical Advice. Why do we call the show that? Because everything we're talking about is like cray. You know what I'm saying? Like double cray, cray squared. Right, Tom Heineber?
That's right.
It's what we do, people. And today we have a legendary figure from the internets who went through a journey that I think many of us, whether we're in medicine or whether we're patients and we're struggling trying to figure out what's the right answer for how do we take care of ourselves, how do we train to help other people, what can we do to reconcile science and witchcraft. We have the legendary Britt Hermes. She was a naturopath for a while and left the field. And we're going to talk about what a naturopath is and is now studying, she has her master's in science and is now studying for her PhD in mammalian microbiomes and biomedical stuff. So she went from naturopathy to real science, and in the process, real science. You see where my bias is, Tom Heineber? In the process, she wrote an online blog called the Naturopathic Diaries, which blew the lid off of how people train in naturopathy and created hella butthurt across the continuum of care. Britt Hermes. Wow.
Hi.
I'm so stoked you're here.
Thanks.
Now, I have to tell people you're feeling really crappy today.
Thanks.
You're jet lagged, you have like a stomach thing, and so that you still came shows your dedication to destroying pseudoscience. I love it. Are you feeling okay?
I'm feeling okay.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So cut her some slack, guys, because it's been a long day for you.
If I need some homeopathy in the middle of the interview, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I have plenty of, I have Newt, which I find is extremely efficacious for
I keep
mild nausea.
taking Nux Vomica, but it doesn't seem to be working.
You're speaking a language that I don't want to understand. So, you know, tell us.
P.S. Tara says, I'm the MA for a naturopathic clinic. I'm going to be glued today.
Oh, all right. What's her name, Tara?
Tara.
Tara, listen, Tara, we actually think that people who are in the field of naturopathy are good people trying to help people. Now, what we want to do is talk about, well, what is that field? What is their training? And is it based on science or is it based on something else? And you have deep experience in this.
Right.
Why did you even go in that direction? Can you tell your story maybe a little bit?
Right. So the story starts when I was about 16 years old. I got psoriasis, and it wasn't just a little bit of psoriasis. I was covered in psoriasis. And for anyone listening, of course I know you know, but for anyone listening who doesn't know what this is, it's a really unsightly chronic skin condition.
And you're 16.
And I'm 16. I live in Southern California, so I want to wear shorts and tank tops.
And everyone's superficial as fuck.
Everyone's superficial.
Right.
I'm the only brunette girl in school. So I have this skin condition where I have these giant red plaques, like giant red patches, I could call them, all over my body, like literally all over. And my mom has the condition, so I knew what it was right away. So my mom says, go to my dermatologist. So I show up. He's this old white guy. He doesn't have
Welcome to medicine.
Exactly. He doesn't have any time for me. You know, I remember him being really rushed and basically treating me like I was a little girl who was being vain about the situation.
And you're 16.
And I'm crying in the office saying, why do I have this condition? How can I get rid of this condition? My mom has it. She's had it all her life, or at least, you know, all that I can remember. She does steroids, she injects herself with drugs, and it doesn't seem to get any better. So I'm terrified of this type of future for myself. Disfigurement
and social pariah. And just, I had a friend in high school who had severe plaque, diffuse psoriasis.
Yeah.
And it was devastating for him.
It is devastating. Yeah, it really, people stop you on the street and ask you what's wrong with you.
Are you okay? Yeah.
Right. It's really hard on the ego. So he said, there's nothing I can really do for you except take these steroid creams. And he wasn't even willing to engage in the conversation with me about diet or stress or anything else that could potentially be contributing to this. I asked the questions. And in my memory, he was just basically an asshole to me. And, you know, he's like, here's the script. I'm out the door.
Yeah.
And so I went home and I cried. And the way that I remember the story is my dad was actually really upset that I was upset. And he dropped me off at the library. It was the year 2000, so Google was around, but I wasn't really familiar with using it yet. Went to the library, started looking up information about psoriasis. One thing led to another, just sort of digging through textbooks, found some natural medicine textbooks that really preached about diet and lifestyle and taking anti-inflammatory supplements. I changed my diet. My dad went on a hunt to find cod liver oil. I started taking teaspoons of this unfiltered, unflavored, disgusting, really had to suppress the gag reflex to get it down, cod liver oil. I started doing the so-called alternative treatments and the steroids. My skin got better. In my mind, my skin got better because of the alternative stuff that I was doing and not because I was religiously applying this steroid cream.
It was a correlation.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. But it was a very empowering experience for me because I felt like I had, taken charge of my health.
Yeah.
I felt like my doctor had said, here's this terrible prognosis. And I was like, forget you, I'm gonna go do my own thing and take control of my own health. And I did feel better because I stopped drinking so much soda and I stopped eating so much pizza and, some of these, I cleaned up my teenage diet.
Right.
And over time, I just really started to develop this sense that alternative medicine had answers for problems conventional medicine couldn't treat.
And none of that seems irrational to me. As a kid, you're there, you're seeing this correlation, you're getting better, you said you felt empowered. This guy was an asshole, which I'm gonna say, I've noticed this happens in the specialties sometimes where you have to churn a lot of volume to keep the lights on. They really do. They're a hammer and everything's a nail and it has to be, here's your prescription.
Right.
Our culture of training is bad. The way that we work in teams was bad, and it's worse back then. But it's still a problem. So yes, big failing of Western medicine, huge failing. The connection isn't there, the empowerment isn't there, the partnership is not there.
And there was no empathy for me.
You didn't feel it, yeah.
No, I really needed someone to acknowledge what a difficult situation this was for me.
So that's all it took. That's all it took. And he didn't do any of that.
He wasn't capable of it, I don't think.
So I had severe acne as a kid. And so my mom took me to the dermatologist and I had the same fucking experience. Like, this woman was evil. She wanted to torture me by sticking needles in my face like Hellraiser.
Yeah.
She constantly berated how I looked, which this is the whole thing. You're a teenager. Your ego is dependent on your external appearance and your social connection. And so it was the same. I had the same experience, but just from a different angle.
Right.
And I remember thinking, I'm never going to be a dermatologist because they're all assholes.
Right.
But anyway, so after this happened, did this then inform you to say, well, okay, now I want to help people in a way that actually helped me? Yeah. Yeah,
because my friends noticed that I was feeling better. They noticed that my skin got better.
Yeah.
And then it sort of just slowly snowballed where I started pursuing different alternative therapies for problem X.
Z-Money.
Right. Yeah.
So
Your mic is messed up.
Is my mic messed up?
Fix your mic, man. Thank you. Thank you.
This is
right in the middle of Britt's story. This is how you choose to act. You're the host. All right, there you go. That's for you. I'm caught on you now. Okay, bye.
I hate you so much, Tom Heineber. And Logan, I don't love you either. Anyways, you were saying...
We told Britt the show was casual. She just didn't know how casual.
So other alternative treatments.
Right.
Now, you had other problems, real or perceived?
Both.
Both, yeah.
Yeah, sure. You know, I had skin problems I had acne problems that I went, to an esthetician for who recommended Chinese medicine, and I did acupuncture for this, and fatigue, PMS, I don't know.
The usual, everything that Logan still suffers from. Yeah.
Normal things.
Right. And those things you think helped you, and you were more encouraged then that these things might?
Sure.
At least correlate.
Sure. I mean, there were certainly a lot of things in my life that I needed to structure and sort of set a schedule around. So exercising regularly.
Yeah.
Getting 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
Drinking more water. Eating more fruits and vegetables and not so much pizza. These types of things. But this is common sense. It isn't, it's not alternative medicine. Where it gets tricky is that sort of blends into, I'm getting sound advice to eat better, but then they're saying, oh, take this supplement.
Right.
Or the supplement's been proven. And that supplement goes from like, you know, just a little bit of B vitamins to suddenly I'm injecting myself with B vitamins, or should we stop?
Motherfuckers, like, I told people that B vitamins are a gateway drug. Okay? The next thing you know, Britt's on the street, there's a tourniquet, she's doing this. Right? Am I right? Of course I'm right. I'm sorry, you were saying. So it was pretty serious supplementation.
Yeah.
Parenteral supplementation. Yeah.
It's a slippery slope, and
Yeah.
it's really easy for it to happen, because if you start to feel better with something taken orally, and then someone suggests, oh, we should do it intravenously.
If a little is good.
Sounds ridiculous now from the other side of the table, but it was that easy.
And that gets into that whole IV turmeric thing that happened recently, where this
that was
young lady
sad.
was killed with this adulterated turmeric. Anyways, that's a different story. But again, back to sort of this. So this started being your own personal experience, and then you decided you were going to go to naturopathy school. Is that how it said, naturopathy, or is it naturopathy?
You can say it either way.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to say it both ways, just to confuse our followers. So how did you apply? Was it very competitive to get in? Where did you go?
So I was doing a degree in psychology at San Diego State. I had a health psychology teacher who talked a lot about motivational interviewing and was like super into woo. He actually sold supplements to his students. And was
That's
really
ethical.
into, yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, but he was speaking my language. So I was
Yeah.
sitting in class. I'm like, wow, this guy's awesome.
Confirmation bias,
And
yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
And so I was looking up health psychology graduate courses, and somehow in the course of this internet searching process, I found Bastyr University.
Bastyr, okay.
And they're located outside of Seattle, Washington. And the language, the marketing language on their website just spoke to me
Right.
perfectly. It resonated so perfectly with me, because they advertise and continue to advertise their programs as a rigorous curriculum. They say they teach degrees in science-based natural medicine. They talk about their degrees blending the best of modern medicine and traditional medicine. So-
Integrating.
Exactly,
Yes, right.
exactly. So I was really under the impression that if I were to become a naturopathic doctor, I would be pursuing a medical degree plus all of this other natural stuff. So the application process was quite simple. I just needed to apply. There was no graduate school entrance exam, so no GRE, no MCAT.
No MCAT.
No MCAT.
Right.
Did you have to have a GED?
Or a high school degree?
High school diploma?
Yeah, you have to have a high school diploma.
Okay.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Standards, people.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. We got to, come on, guys, like high school. Everything I needed to learn, I learned in 9th grade. Like how to get in a fight in the shower and break your front tooth and have a snaggletooth for the rest of your life. I learned that.
In 9th grade.
Yeah. So there weren't really, so it was really just show up, apply, pay some money.
Show up, apply, interview,
Interview,
pay money.
pay money.
Yeah.
And the marketing materials had you believing that you were going to learn medicine plus this extra secret sauce.
That's right.
Right. That, again, you said it spoke to you. To me, that, again, our elephant, we talk on the show in terms of elephant and rider. Elephant is our unconscious conditioned mind that has belief and hope and fear and those kind of things. And then our rider is our rational thinker that really evolved to be a press secretary for the elephant. But if we train it right through skepticism and reason, practice, we can actually get it to override the elephant. But
Right.
not many of us are there yet. So your elephant was really inclined to believe that natural is better and that empowerment is important in these
Right.
things. And that's what they were selling you.
That's what they were selling me. I
Yeah.
had personal experiences that fed into this.
Got it.
And I wanted to be a doctor. So I really wanted it to be this. So I wasn't really willing to look at it critically, because I have doctors in my lives. And you know, these doctor friends were saying, and really important people in my life too that have watched me grow up, are saying, Britt, maybe you don't want to be a naturopath. Maybe you just want to go to medical school, because if you want to be a doctor, go be an MD.
Right.
But I was convinced that they were sort of part of the bad medicine.
Yeah.
Part of bad mainstream medicine. They didn't understand. They weren't willing to open their minds and look at what naturopathy is.
Sure.
And I was just unwilling to think about or consider what they were saying in their critiques.
Sure. And you know what? Your stance was not unfair, because many are. They are just absolutely closed to it. They haven't really looked into it, et cetera. But of course they're right. But that's a whole nother subject. But it comes from a place too of the typical physician arrogance that you often see, which is, well, if you could have been a doctor, you would have just been a doctor. And we say that to nurses and nurse practitioners and pharmacists and PAs, and it's horseshit. But that's the hierarchy. So then you ended up getting in.
Yep.
And probably had to pay a decent tuition.
Yep, about $45,000 a year.
Wow. And not minus room and board, or?
Without room and board.
Without room and board.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty hefty tuition. It's a private enterprise?
Yep.
Not for profit or for profit?
Not for profit.
Not for profit, which means nothing. And how many years?
4 years.
4 years. Now, what do you learn
Right.
in naturopathy school?
Right. So it's advertised that the first 2 years are just like medical school. Literally, they say these words, just
So
like medical school.
were you depressed, suicidal? Did you develop a drinking habit? Experiment with cocaine? I mean, like what?
No.
Okay, then it wasn't just like medical school.
But we took classes with the same names as medical courses. So we took an anatomy class. I took a gross anatomy class.
Okay.
I dissected cadavers.
Okay, so actual cadavers. Great.
Actual cadavers that were loaned to us from University of Washington.
Okay, wonderful.
I took a physiology course.
Uh-huh.
Histology lab, biochemistry course. So a lot of these same types of classes.
Right.
And then, but also in that year and then in the later years, alternative medicine is stuck in there. So I'm also
Right.
taking homeopathy classes, a lot of homeopathy classes, a lot of herbal medicine or herbalism, botany type classes, from studying the herbs to also a wet lab, an herbal wet lab course where you're actually preparing herbal medicines, like putting them in capsules or making tinctures out of it.
Did you have to ever pull a teenage mandrake out of a pot and put in earplugs because the cry of the mandrake can be fatal?
But
it sounds
honestly,
like Hogwarts
honestly,
to
it
me.
really felt like the campus actually feels like Hogwarts. We
Wow.
joke about this all the time.
Today, Britt Hermes, you will be a wizard. But tell me this: the histology, the anatomy. Do you think it was medical school level sort of stuff?
No.
Oh.
At the time I did.
Uh-huh.
And even when I was first initially speaking out against naturopathy, I thought perhaps it was at that level. I didn't understand that it wasn't at the medical level or even a PhD level, graduate school level, until I started to re-educate myself.
Yeah.
And I went into a master's program and had to retake, they wouldn't accept these courses. I had to retake them.
Oh, so you took both versions.
I've taken both
So you've done a
versions.
placebo-controlled trial, a sequential, case control thing, where now you've seen both, and you're saying what you learned at Bastyr was not the level of what you. Okay.
Yeah. My anatomy class at Bastyr was pretty good. But other than that,
okay, so anatomy was
Definitely
good, real cadaver, the rest of it was not.
Yeah.
And the alternative stuff, the botanicals, homeopathy, which, for those who don't know, is a placebo at best and very dilute water.
I got one in the comments, see.
Yeah, come on.
Amy says, I'd like to challenge this guy, meaning you bald jerk, to get someone on his show that actually practices naturopathic medicine in an evidence-based way. So they're slamming Britt and saying Britt didn't do that. And then also, I'd love to show you the text and notes from my biochem course taught by a PhD in biochem. I air quoted PhD for those of you listening on the podcast.
Okay, you just wait because she's going to talk about that. Please. So we were saying botanicals, homeopathy, and she's asking, well, what about get a naturopath on who practices in an evidence-based way? You have thoughts on that? We'll get to that at the end. Tom, don't let us forget.
I won't.
Because that's a
I won't.
smackdown that we
also,
won't shy
essential
away
oils.
from.
I need to know, Z.
Essential oils?
I need to know.
The only essential oil I believe in is the 10W40 I put in my Toyota Camry Hybrid 2012 fabric interior. So the first 2 years are like that, or is it all 4 years? Because when do you do your clinicals?
You do your clinicals in the last 2 years.
Got it.
So similar
Just
to
like medical school.
Yeah, so it's set up to emulate medical school as much as possible.
I see.
You take your first set of licensing exams after the 2 years. You take a second set of licensing exams after you graduate. Naturopaths get this wrong all the time, and they call their licensing exam a board certification.
Exam. Right.
It's not a board certification exam. It's a licensing exam. Of course, you know this. But it's set up to emulate medical school as much as possible. And our clinicals are taking place in a naturopathic teaching clinic. So it's an outpatient clinic run by naturopaths. Our supervisors are licensed naturopathic doctors. And we see patients in 3-hour time chunks.
I see.
And we see 1 to 2 patients during that time.
1 to 2 in a 3-hour. So here's one of the big
1
differences.
to 2 to 3.
1 to 2 to 3 in a 3-hour period.
Yeah.
So this is already different than the Western model because you're spending a lot of time with patients.
Right.
And to me, that's one of the big advantages of the relationship you can build in naturopathy is that you actually have time.
Right.
You're not in the same volume grind that we are, probably because they're charging a ton of money for
Right.
witchcraft. But that's another subject. But
Hey, Z.
yeah.
Z, take your mic out of your hoodie. Take it out of your hoodie, Z. Sounds so bad, Z.
I hate you so much, Tom
Yeah, just
Heidelberg.
clip it to the side.
Clip it to the side, Z.
Okay, I'm
There
going
you
to do
go.
that.
Come on, Z.
Yeah.
You know what?
That's
You're
much better,
embarrassing me
Z.
in front of our guest.
Thank you so much.
This is why no one wears hoodies on TV, Z.
You know who wears a hoodie on TV? Mark Zuckerberg, okay? And he's more rich than all of us combined. So you just shut up. Anyway, so don't listen to them. They're bad people, okay? They're bastard people. Just understand that. Now, speaking of Bastille, so these rotations, they're always supervised by an ND. You don't work with MDs or DOs or PAs or NPs.
No, there's a couple. So there, just to be super specifically accurate. So there was a shift, for example. Gosh, I think it was called minor office procedures, and this was supervised by a medical doctor. And he would come in for just this one shift, and I think he did it once a year or maybe once a semester. But the majority of the shifts are, if not all of the shifts, are run by naturopaths.
A naturopath. Okay, so you're in that world. So in other words, it's like a parallel Hogwarts to the real world.
Sure.
So you have the Muggle doctors,
Yeah.
and then you have the witches and wizards who run the Hogwarts of Bastille. And as a special witch or wizard, did you guys feel different or better or worse than your medical colleagues when you were training? What was your ego structure like in that period?
I felt better
Yeah.
than my medical colleague.
Yeah.
Because I really, so one of the things that naturopaths say, and that really sort of resonated with me, is that I used medical texts to study in naturopathic school. Because the medical texts are far better than the naturopathic texts.
Sure.
And they're more complete, and so you could just pull out what you needed. But I sort of twisted that to mean like, oh, well, because I can use a medical text to study for my naturopathic class, this must mean I'm receiving the same education.
Right. So you're all of naturopathy plus you got the medicine part dialed.
Right.
Right. And that's that makes sense from a confirmation bias standpoint. You're like, well, I'm already this thing that I went into this for this reason to differentiate myself from the Western.
Right.
Right. So when you came out, now what made you look? First of all, did you realize when you graduated you're now a full-fledged licensed naturopath,
Right.
which is done how? Did you do a residency?
You don't have to do a residency, so they're optional. I did do a residency.
Okay.
So I was, they're sort of considered to be prestigious in the naturopathic field because there's very few of them. At least at the time that I graduated, there was very few. And so there was only one so-called accredited naturopathic residency in pediatrics.
Yeah.
And that's the one that I got.
I
So
see.
I was quite proud of myself. I felt like I was sort of the best.
I'm kind of proud of you too.
Oh, thanks.
And I'll tell you why. Because, and Z-Pack, you got to understand this fact. Logan, hit me with the wide. Because I don't know what
Sorry,
you're doing
Tom's
right now.
distracting me.
Tom, stop distracting Tom. Okay, first of all, my mic is screwed up. This show is a disaster, Britt. Okay, so listen. When you graduate medical school, you are not okay to see patients. I'm meaning you cannot be a practicing physician. It's just, and I'm not saying this from a legal standpoint. I'm saying this from I've been there. You are not safe to see patients. That's why we do the residency and get the 10,000 hours of experience and so on and so forth, at least at a level that they expect doctors to practice. So the question is, coming out of a naturopathy school, are you ready? Now, you did a residency, which we'll ask you about in a second, but out of naturopathy school, do you think you were ready to just start seeing patients?
God, no.
Yeah.
No.
And most of them
No.
don't do a residency.
No, right. Most
Okay.
don't do a resident. It's actually terrifying to think about that I was practicing independently. I mean, I was in a resident position, which meant I had a salary.
Right.
But I was allowed to practice independently. I had my own, I had my own provider number. I could have gotten a DEA number. I could call myself a primary care physician.
You can write prescriptions?
Oh, yeah.
For medical stuff?
Yeah, not in every state, but
Right.
in Washington and Arizona where I practiced, I had a DEA number. There were some controlled things that I could prescribe.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, please continue. So
Yeah.
the residency, what was that about?
So that was also in an outpatient naturopathic clinic, outpatient setting. And I saw people in like a family medicine type of setting. So I had babies to grandparents. So I was responsible for things like the heel stick test and testing newborns for inborn errors,
metabolism.
Exactly.
I mean, that,
I did pap smears, for example. I did like these types of cancer screening tests. I did general wellness. But then I just had patients who, like a young woman who was diagnosed with MS and she wanted a second opinion. And so she came in to see me as if I could give a second opinion to a neurologist for an MS diagnosis. But this was the variety of patients that I saw.
Wow. So when an MS patient came in, and what did you tell her? What would you have
So for this patient in particular, I actually referred her to a colleague of mine who gave her a naturopathic treatment plan that included things like special foods. So to eat things that were that would help her mitochondrial function. So she was told to eat things like anchovies, for example.
Of course, because we learned that in Med School 101, anchovies and mitochondria. They're like peas in a pod.
Lots of supplements. Lots of supplements.
Which cost money.
Which cost a lot of money.
And are unregulated.
And are uninsured. Okay.
And then she would come back to me, and I would actually provide a lot of emotional support for her trying to implement these therapies because it was costly. She was a vegetarian, so to be asked to eat things
Anchovies.
like fish, exactly, this
Yeah.
was really emotionally distressing for her. So we had counseling sessions around whether or not she should, break her values and start to eat fish because this was recommended to her. Her relationship deteriorated throughout all of this because it was expensive and hard on her relationship to process, not just having MS, but also now having to rearrange her life according to these naturopathic tenets.
I see. Did it help her?
No.
Oh, gosh. So, wow. So you finished your residency, and then you practiced for a bit?
That's right. I practiced for 3 years in total, including my residency.
Okay, so guys, remember earlier we were talking about talk to a naturopath who actually practiced using evidence-based stuff. So she practiced for 3 years. The evidence-based stuff, well, every naturopath thinks they're evidence-based. That's the thing, right? Because you're trained, and they tell you this is...
Yeah, this is really important to understand.
Yeah.
So when you're going through naturopathic school, we're provided with information that tells us what we're being taught is evidence-based or science-based.
Science-based.
These are different things, right? Evidence-based doesn't mean the same thing as science-based.
Science-based could mean like one study. Something
Yeah,
like
what does
that.
science-based... Tell us, clarify that for us.
Yeah, so evidence-based means that you're pulling from a body of evidence that shows that, through some trial setup, that there's evidentiary support. So I'm just using the same words in the definition. I know that's not...
No, I like that. No.
But that's basically what it means. So
Yeah.
homeopathy is a really good example to try to differentiate these terms.
Yeah.
So you can find evidence, even randomized controlled trials, that make it look like
Yeah.
Homeopathy might work.
Right.
Okay. You pull from that body of research, you cherry pick those studies, whatever.
Cherry pick 'em,
now
yeah.
you have an evidence-based therapy.
I see.
Science-based means that it's actually plausible.
There's a mechanism.
There's a
Yeah.
mechanism.
Right. So that's
And
where homeopathy would fail.
Homeopathy is not science-based,
Right.
It's nonsense. It's not. It breaks the laws of physics.
Right.
It's not plausible.
Right.
And so the argument is that we should make sure something is science-based before we even move on to studying it.
Yeah.
It should pass the science test
Right.
first.
Right. Let me just ask you, this is a side question. Why do you think homeopathy works for so many people?
Well, I can tell you my story with homeopathy.
Please.
So the first time I was introduced to homeopathy was at Bastyr. I didn't actually know about homeopathy before I was in school there. And I showed up to class one day, and I had a really terrible spider bite on my leg. And I was terrified that it was one of these like necrotizing spider bites.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Are you an injection heroin user?
No.
Because every injection heroin user at some point comes in with a spider bite that's really just skin popping. So now my hackles are really raised, Britt, because first of all, now I don't trust you because I'm sure you're a drug user. And number two, this is called correlation, not causation. Please continue.
Right.
Yeah.
So I
Spider bite.
had this gnarly spider bite on my leg. You could feel it where it was swollen and like the heat from the spider bite through my jeans.
Yeah,
And it
wow.
was itchy, itchy, itchy. And so during a break in class, I went up to my naturopathic teacher and I said, I have a spider bite. I don't know if I need antibiotics. I actually asked her if she thought I needed antibiotics or a
Right.
steroid or something because it was just getting worse and just bothering me like crazy.
Right.
And she said, oh, you know what you need. You know what homeopathic remedy you need, right? I said, no. And she said, you need apis because you've been bitten. And so it's a puncture wound and it's hot and it's red. And this is like classic presentation for this homeopathic remedy named apis. So other common ailments for using apis is like a bee sting, for example. run up to the Bastyr bookstore, pick up some Apis in this certain dilution, 30C, take 5 capsules under the tongue, away from food and drink, and you'll have to redose it every 6 hours. And this will work. This will cure your spider bite. And you'll know when you need to take it again because it'll start to itch again.
And 3 things will happen. You'll either get better, you'll stay the same, or you'll get worse. And that's how you know it's working.
Right.
Right.
So I thought, brilliant. So I go up to the bookstore. It's $8 for a homeopathic remedy. I pick
That's
it
a
up.
deal.
I take it. And it's not really working at first. So I redose, and then, I don't know. At
You
some
should have
point-
diluted it further.
I should have
that makes
diluted it
stronger,
further.
Right.
But at some point, I did start to feel like it was itching less. And then it didn't really bother me. And then 4 to 6 hours later, I was like, oh, it's itching again. Oh, just like she said. I need to take another dose of homeopathy. And in a day and a half, it was completely healed. Z-Dog.
Did she, at the end of her speech, did she be like, Wingardium Leviosa? It's Leviosa, actually. That is exactly the story that I hear from patients who are like, homeopathy works for me.
Right.
It is a placebo where if you had cloned yourself and done nothing,
It would have gotten better
the
anyway.
exact same thing would have happened.
Right.
Or it wouldn't have. Taking something, the therapeutic relationship and the expectation released various neurotransmitters and hormones that made you feel better.
Right.
The true placebo.
Right.
So, yes. So homeopathy, really the bomb.
There was another time when I was in practice, there was a patient, she got bit by a dog. And she had a really deep puncture wound. And my recommendation was antibiotics and make sure she had her tetanus vaccine.
Right.
Which I knew because of Up to Date, not because of my training. I'm
Up
just
to
gonna
date,
say.
my favorite journal reference.
God, I
yes,
love that
I love
one.
Up to Date so much.
I miss having access to it, actually.
You don't have access?
No, I don't
I'll give
pay
you
for
my
it.
password. Don't listen, Walters. I was just in Boston. I drove by
love it.
Walters Kluwer, the people who make Up to Date, and I almost got out and said 10 Hail Marys
Thank
and did a little thing
you.
because I was like,
They're
you
the
people
best.
are science.
They're the best.
So, yeah.
I don't know what I would have done in practice without Up to Date. I swear to God, I would
It's a
have.
fantastic thing. Yeah. Don't tell anyone, but a lot of times when I teach on the show, I got Up to Date open in the corner just to back me up. You
Just
know what I'm
to be
saying?
sure.
Just to back me up.
So Up to Date told me what the standard of care was. So this is what I recommended. And I got into a big argument with a naturopath in the clinic because he was afraid, she was his patient, and he was afraid that my recommendation would make her multiple chemical sensitivity disorder worse. So, multiple chemical sensitivity disorder, as you know, is not a real thing.
Not a real thing. It's called being crazy or having chronic psychosomatic pain or...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so not a real diagnosis.
Not a real diagnosis.
But she was paying lots of money to have treatments for it,
Sure.
including lots of intravenous vitamins, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
I sh-
Intravenous vitamins. Nice.
And so he was afraid that the antibiotic and the vaccine would make her worse. And not only that, but he believed that she was highly susceptible to a vaccine
Related
injury
complication. Right.
because of the multiple chemical sensitivity disorder.
Right.
Anyway, a big to-do. I refused to back down. So for the listener who says that I wasn't an evidence-based practitioner, here
Suck
it is.
it. Yeah, give it.
So, but the way that I got around this with her is I remembered in my training the homeopathic remedy for preventing vaccine-related injuries. So I gave her this homeopathic remedy. I told her to get the vaccine and to take this homeopathy prophylactically,
Yeah.
and I would prevent a reaction.
Right.
I saw her 3 days later. Guess what, Dr. Jegan? Well, that's my maiden name.
Yeah.
I didn't have a reaction. She was thrilled, and this is how I used
Homeopathy.
homeopathy in order to get her to follow the standard of care.
Do you think it's unethical to do that if you know
Yes.
homeopathy doesn't work?
Yep.
I think it's unethical to lie to patients. I
Yep.
think it's not unethical to use a placebo if you tell them it's a placebo and it still
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
But it's unethical to lie to patients. So, okay.
I agree. That was a
That's amazing. So, okay, now you're in this
tough
practice
situation.
and something happened that made you say, fuck all this, I'm out.
yeah.
What was that?
My former boss.
Yeah.
His name is Michael Yuzik.
Oh, naming names, are we?
Oh yeah.
Is our
'Cause of-
slander policy up to date?
Hell no, Z.
Okay, let's do this. Bring it.
Well, it's truthful. It's a truthful story.
Oh,
so.
good. So it can't be liable if it's true.
He was importing a non-FDA approved drug and administering it to cancer patients.
Nice.
And under his
Douchebag.
medical orders, I was assisting and giving these injections of this drug as well.
Wow, so you had to be accomplice to this.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, to import and administer a non-FDA approved drug is a federal crime.
Oh, wouldn't be the first time I've done a federal crime, but mine's mostly white collar stuff like tax fraud.
Tax evasion.
Sorry, is this on? Are we still live? Anyways, please continue. So this thing happens.
So this thing happens.
Asked to administer it.
Yeah. When I found all of this out, life changed in about 48 hours.
Wow.
So I figured all of this out on a Friday, meaning I figured out that the drug was not FDA approved, and then it took me some time with Dr. Google to figure out what this meant.
Right.
Actually, which might seem quite obvious to the medical audience, but as a naturopath, I did a ton of shit that was not approved by the FDA.
Yeah.
So it didn't actually click that this was a really big
deal.
Fucking deal.
Yeah.
Until I realized what it all meant, and then put it together that of course I was involved in this.
Right.
And felt like I had some responsibility and liability.
Wow.
In this situation as well.
So then what did you end up doing?
I got a lawyer.
Oh yeah.
I knew I wanted to quit, but I also wanted to talk to a lawyer before I did anything.
Right.
So I got a lawyer. He confirmed all of my fears and he laid it out very black and white for me that this was a big deal, that this is a federal crime, and that of course this isn't okay. So I reported my former boss to the Arizona Naturopathic Physicians Medical Board.
That's a thing.
That's a thing. So in Arizona, naturopaths can call themselves physicians.
Okay.
So they're the medical board. The naturopathic board uses that title. The regulatory board. I reported him to the attorney general, and I quit.
Got it.
And
that's a very courageous thing to do, or were you more scared than courageous?
I was terrified.
Yeah.
I was terrified.
Yeah.
Going to the attorney general was
horrifying. Yeah.
I cried and shook through the whole thing.
Did you take a homeopathic anti-anxiety pill?
I took Xanax.
Yes, Xanax. That'll work. That'll work. Wow.
Yeah, I had a psychiatrist and a psychologist throughout this whole thing. My blood pressure was like 160 over 100 for a while.
Wow.
Because it was very scary and very stressful.
Wow. And so after all that played out, you left that.
Yeah, so there were some key things that happened.
Well, Britt, can I ask you a question real quick? Do you think that's a rare occurrence in naturopathy or all too common? Because it seems to me to be super common.
Right. So this is part of the this is part of the story. It is not rare.
Oh.
It's sort of the essence of naturopathic medicine.
Yep.
Fantastic.
So a few things happened. I got a call from a really important person in my life who was a mentor of mine at the time. I really looked up to him, former president of the American Association of Naturopathic Physicians, a really big deal in the field. I loved this guy like an uncle. He called me and told me that this wasn't a big deal and that I should go back to work for my boss, that I shouldn't, he didn't know that I had reported him. He told me I shouldn't report him. And he said, Britt, you are a naturopath after all. Wow. So that was just unbelievably devastating.
Yeah.
To have someone that I looked up to so much tell me that I was overreacting.
Was this a potentially harmful compound?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The drug is named Ukraine.
Ukraine. Sounds like something Tom would snort on the weekend just cause. So Ukraine.
Ukraine. And the reason I found out that this drug was not FDA approved is because it had been arriving from Austria.
Yeah.
And shipments of the drug of the Ukraine had stopped arriving. I asked my boss why. Perhaps we wouldn't have gotten it, which was a big deal because patients were paying thousands of dollars out of pocket up front for this drug. And they were on a tight schedule with it, so they were afraid that if they went off schedule,
missed it, their cancer would grow.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And shipments probably stopped arriving because around that time, the drug's manufacturer was arrested in Vienna for fraud, for charges of relabeling expired product and continuing to sell it. And so based on all of that timing, it's highly likely our patients received some of that expired product.
Oh my gosh.
And this product is believed to be an herbal product made from a plant called chelidonium, but it does have chemotherapeutic alkaloids in it. And alkaloids are quite toxic.
Right. Hence the chemo component.
So so this drug has been known to cause side effects like bone marrow toxicity and liver failure and really gnarly side effects.
Yeah, just like chemo.
just like chemo.
Except chemo has...
Except unregulated, and we don't know how much is in it.
Don't know how much is in it, can't dose it right, and giving it to people who are desperate for hope.
And it was marketed as a cure-all, so it could cure any type, including pancreatic cancer.
Which, as we know, any chemo... Look, no matter what cancer you get, Britt, I'm going to give you the same chemo because it's dope as fuck. So this is crazy.
Yeah.
It's unregulated like all supplements and a lot of natural products, correct?
Yeah.
And you're asked to administer it. You leave.
Yep.
You tell the Attorney General and Arizona Board of Witchcraft
Yep.
and Wizardry. And then what happened to you?
So I got this call from my mentor, which is devastating. Yep. And then
he says, "Suck it up. This is what we do."
He says, "Suck it up."
Are you a witch or not?
That's how I felt.
Right?
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
Right.
Then I started to look at what naturopaths around the country were doing, because I thought, okay, well, if this is a bad apple, I can come up with excuses, right, to
like
justify this.
Is it the standard of pseudoscience in the community?
Right.
Because if I'm practicing the standard of pseudoscience, then hey, I'm good, right?
But I found other naturopaths marketing the same drug.
I see.
And then I found many naturopaths marketing many non-FDA approved drugs for all sorts of conditions, including cancer and other really serious or terminally devastating illnesses. And then I just didn't know what was what anymore. I went and got a book called Trick or Treatment, written by Ezzard Ernst and Simon Singh. Do you know this book?
What a great name for a book.
It's an awesome book.
I don't know it, but it sounds amazing.
I highly, highly recommend it. Trick or Treatment, Alternative Medicine on Trial by Ezzard Ernst,
okay.
who is a medical doctor from Germany.
Yep.
He used to practice homeopathy, ended up becoming a medical researcher for complementary and alternative medicine at the University of Exeter in the UK. He was brought in with the assumption that he would find evidence to support CAM, but he kept
CAM is complementary and alternative medicine, yeah.
He kept finding evidence that showed that these alternative therapies didn't work.
Oh, no.
And being the awesome medical researcher and ethical man that he is, he was publishing true results,
Right,
which
so
showed
negative results, yeah.
It cost him his job ultimately.
Of course.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and Simon Singh, who is a physicist and a big name in the skeptic community.
Yeah.
So it's a great book, and they go through alternative treatments chapter by chapter. So they cover acupuncture for sure, homeopathy, naturopathy. I think they cover chiropractic techniques
Placebo.
Right. So this book was my Bible for a while.
Right.
And I lived with this book on my bedside table, and I went through it chapter by chapter in an order, not in the order it was written. I went through it in an order that I could sort of take in the information.
Yeah.
So I didn't have any emotional attachment to acupuncture or chiropractic, for example.
Right.
So I read those chapters first.
Right.
And by the time I got through the book, I realized that it was all basically bunk. And practicing naturopathy would be totally unethical. I would have to be showing up and lying to my patients every day.
So I gotta wonder, your whole life had been leading through naturopathy for all the reasons that you had confirmation bias, wanting to see naturopathy be true throughout your life. How was it, do you think, that one book, which you should have either rejected or gone through and said, oh, this is another reason why naturopathy is true, pulled out the cherry-picked the parts that may confirm it, more confirmation bias? Why didn't that happen? Is it because you were so upset by the malfeasance you saw in the doctor's office?
Yeah,
I put doctor in quotes.
Yeah, there's a couple things. I was scared out of my mind. I was afraid that, so some of the patients that we saw who were being treated with this cancer drug, Ukraine, died during treatment. They probably died from their cancer, but actually I don't know. I don't know if the drug expedited their death.
So you're worried.
Or not. Yeah, I'm worried. It was a horrible experience. I'm driven by guilt, I think, at this point. Not ever wanting to be in this situation of being ignorant and not knowing what I'm doing. I suddenly felt like I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
And my world didn't make sense to me anymore. So I think I was in this really sort of special place that I could, but it wasn't, going through this book was horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. I would literally read a page or two on naturopathy, cry, put it down, and not pick it up for a week.
Yeah.
I had to force myself, honest to God, force myself to get through it because I knew I had, and it was written so beautifully and so compassionately, and I didn't feel like the book was trying to sell me anything. They weren't trying to sell me on medicine. They weren't trying to sell me on alternative medicine. I didn't feel like there was any agenda there.
Right.
So it was just written in a very neutral, beautifully way for me to...
More easy for your elephant to accept this as truth and start to recondition. Wow. At any point did you consider it may be wrong and maybe you're just overreacting and all the things that your mentor said? This was an important person to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, were
Well,
you having doubts?
I sought out new mentors. So I actually emailed the author. I emailed Edzard Ernst.
Yeah.
And I just laid it all out in an email.
Yeah.
And told him what had happened.
Yeah.
And he wrote back right away.
Wow.
Really compassionately.
Right.
I emailed a woman named Jan Bellamy from Science Based Medicine.
Right.
She writes a lot about naturopathy and the unethical practices of naturopaths. And she was also incredibly kind and warm and...
They weren't super judgy pants? How could you be so stupid?
Nice.
Why would you do something like this?
No, the amount of empathy and just feeling sorry for me, but not letting me feel sorry for myself at the same time.
So actual compassion as opposed to sympathy, empathy. It's more like love in the face of someone else's
They
struggle.
were so wonderful.
And then you made this a crusade and changed your life and actually applied to a program, moved to Germany with your husband, who was a PhD candidate, is it?
That's right, in archaeology.
And in archaeology?
Yeah.
So you married Indiana Jones?
I did.
That's dope AF.
It
wow.
is. It's cool.
So you move with Indy to Germany
Yeah.
and you reboot your entire life and start pursuing a master's in science.
Right.
How did, or fill in any of the gap in that. Tell me how you want to tell that.
Right. Well, that was a very humbling experience. So my husband, Taylor, got accepted into this PhD program. Of course, I went with him. Education in Germany is free, so I realized that this is a wonderful opportunity for me to start over because I have like hundreds of thousands in student loan debt from naturopathic school.
You're still paying debt
Oh my God, are you kidding?
from your
Yeah.
naturopathy days.
Yeah.
What does it cost? How much?
45 a
$45,000
year.
Oh,
45 a
man.
year.
I
That's
missed that part.
insane. So you're still suffering with this yoke around you, but now have to start over. So Germany, the education's free, which is great.
Yeah.
So you got that head start there.
Right.
And now you start studying science.
Right. So applying to this Masters of Science program was incredibly humbling because I had come to terms with the fact that my education was not, well, I had actually tried to apply for other jobs within the medical fields,
Oh, okay.
doing anything.
What kind of job? Like a medical assistant?
Exactly.
Wow.
Medical assistant, nursing assistant. I wanted to work at a blood draw clinic, phlebotomy manager.
So wait, so you go from being called doctor, being told you're a physician, there's a board, you're in Arizona where they call you doctor, to phlebotomist application?
I couldn't even get hired.
You couldn't get hired.
I couldn't even get
This was in
called back.
Germany.
No, in the U.S.
In the U.S., gotcha.
In the US.
Before you moved, yeah.
Right, before I moved.
Wow, so already you're like, okay,
So
I'm
I'm
not feeling
realizing literally
legal,
the only thing I could do is medical marijuana certifications,
which is dope.
which
No, it's not
you can
dope.
make a lot of money.
You can make a
doing.
lot of money. They tried to get me to do that here. I'm like, it's not, just use it if you want. Make it legal. Don't make me.
Well, it is legal now.
It is now.
Yeah.
And they did because they listen to me because
Yeah.
I'm the
Good
shit.
job.
Yeah, thank you. So you go to, so tell our
Right, so I'm realizing that I can't get a legit job. Well, I can't get a job in the medical field.
Sure.
At least not a job that's going to pay my student loan bills.
Which is crazy for someone who has that much loan and that many years of
And
education.
allowed to call myself a physician, allowed to get
Calling
a
yourself
DEA
that.
number and
You
all
have an
this stuff.
DEA number, you can write prescriptions. Gotcha.
And then I decide I don't even want the naturopathic doctorate degree at all anymore. I decide I want to divorce myself from this profession, and I need to start over. I need to re-educate myself because I don't know anything anymore. I don't know what's real. I don't know what's fake. I applied to this program, and I had to be very blunt in my application letter and just say up front, I went to this naturopathic school. I made a giant mistake.
Wow.
Here is where I think my strong points are, but to be honest, here's my weak points.
Wow.
Please let me in.
Yeah.
They gave me an interview. I flew to Germany because
Wow.
I thought it was so important to convince the committee that I would work hard. It's always better in person.
Yeah.
So I flew to Germany to make my case. They were brutally honest. They told me I was not qualified. Even though they had reviewed syllabi and my degree, they could tell by looking
They
at it.
looked at it and said, this is BS. Yeah.
I would have to retake all of these science classes.
Right.
And I convinced them that if they let me in, I would work really hard and do it. And I I did. I had to totally re-educate myself and work harder than I think anybody in that class. But,
Wow.
But I did it.
Was it in English or German?
English.
In English. So you had to redo all the science, and in doing so, what was your impression?
So then I start to realize that the sciences that I was taught at Bastyr was not at the graduate level.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
So it was like what, like a high school level, college level?
I think it was undergrad level.
Undergrad level science.
But many of the people, right, so it's a master's, so everybody had an undergraduate degree, and their background in science was far stronger.
More sharp, yeah.
Far stronger than mine.
Yeah, so you had to come from this place of...
I'm getting tutored by 23-year-olds, you know? And
That's dope. That's dope. I mean, I still get tutored by these two assholes.
I would bring them over, and I'm like, I will be mom. I will make you dinner.
Oh, that's awesome.
Please teach me biochemistry.
None of them are married. None of
no,
them.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
hilarious.
And it's me and my dog and like little. So I would have them over all the time and play mom, and then they would teach me things.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Did you pick up a bunch of German along the way?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm learning.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So then you actually finished that program.
I finished.
Got a master's of science. And
Yep.
what was the field of study?
Which is biomedical science.
Biomedical science. And now you're pursuing your PhD.
Yep.
And you're studying the mammalian genome with a particular. Explain that to me.
Yeah, so I study the mammalian skin microbiome.
Skin microbiome. Got it. Which is all the rage these days.
All the rage.
Yeah. So people are like, don't wash your hands because you're going to kill your microbiome, dude.
Yeah.
And by the way, what's your take on that?
Washing your hands is
Wash
fine.
your damn hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just don't use the antibacterial.
Right, I agree.
Hand stuffs.
I agree. That's a scam. Awesome. So now you're pursuing your PhD. You're on the path to full science.
Yep.
Somewhere along the way, you did something horrible, which was write a blog.
Start a blog.
Start a blog.
Yeah.
And I know it's horrible because I've done this, and the results are
Brutal.
crazy. They're
Yeah.
brutal. You have to.
Yeah.
You open yourself to both supporters and criticism.
Yeah.
And as a woman too, it's a little different too because you get all kinds of weird hate that a man would never get. And so tell me about the Naturopathic Diaries. Why,
Right.
how, and what?
So I started it in early 2015, before I started my master's program. And I did it as a way to try to figure out what was real and what wasn't. Because I didn't know, and I wanted to critically analyze my naturopathic education.
You're still kind of processing. It's like public
Super
therapy.
process.
Yeah.
It was super public therapy, super processing. I went through my syllabi and course, descriptions, and was doing credit comparisons with medical school because I had been presented with all this information, but I wanted to know if it was real.
Right.
And what I came to find out is that while the naturopathic profession and the education system has some superficial markers of legitimacy, it's actually just a bunch of labeling.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you kind of lay this out in your blog, and I encourage ZPAC, all you guys to go to this website and just check it out and give it a shot and see. And if you disagree, leave comments, etc. But I think it's going to be crucial to understand her experience in, and also if you're looking at naturopathy. Now, people have accused you of all kinds of malfeasance. So you're lying, you have a vendetta.
Right.
Bastyr actually gave you a cease and desist letter.
That's right.
Which, you know what I do to cease and desist letters. I'm like, I'm sorry, can you hear this? Let me turn it up for you. Which is not necessarily the right answer. I'm not giving you legal advice, but I'm saying you clearly triggered something there.
Yeah, I've upset them.
You've upset
So
them.
Bastyr is very upset with me because I say that Bastyr teaches pseudoscience and quackery.
Okay.
And they're very angry with me.
But they
over
don't like
saying
those
this.
words. They sound good.
They don't like those words.
Right.
But last weekend, Bastyr Teaching Clinic hosted a class on bloodletting. And not for treating hemochromatosis.
Right.
So not
Not for
therapeutic
a legitimate bloodletting,
phlebotomy purposes.
but for 18th century madness.
High cholesterol,
Oh, of course.
wrinkles, anti-aging. They taught a technique using a 7-star hammer, which is a hammer with 7 spikes on it. You just tap someone until you bleed.
Oh.
They taught bleeding the knees for herpes.
Tom, finally, a non-invasive way to treat that herpes.
It's been stubborn, Z.
You know, your knees are stubborn too.
I'm out of options, man. And I'm looking for somebody to prey on my fear and denial of my herpes. And I think maybe a naturopath is the perfect person to do that.
So clearly, pseudoscience and what was the other one? Quackery?
Yeah.
Hogwarts School of Pseudoscience and Quackery is probably still valid
Right.
in your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna agree with you
Yeah.
because I agree with you.
Because you agree with me.
a variety
Well,
of reasons.
I mean, so you can look at the real things that I learned for example, I took a class in pharmacology.
Great.
But when you start to look at it more carefully, okay, it's taught by a naturopath. And I took one course in pharmacology, so very superficial coverage of information. I took 3 courses in homeopathy.
Right.
Took 3 times as many classes in made-up medicine.
In magic.
In
Yeah.
magic.
Right.
Than I did in real medicine.
Right.
And that's just an easy comparison. There's so many of these.
Yeah, and you go through it in the site, which I think is very educational. And now people fucking hate you.
Yeah.
They hate you. They
do.
would love to see something terrible happen to you. And I've seen this because I've seen comments, and they use all kinds of horrible, sexist, terrible things they say about you.
Yeah.
How do you process that?
It depends. It depends.
Right.
It depends. When I'm being sent a dick pic,
Oh,
this I don't enjoy so much.
Tom, stop.
But somebody's got to diagnose the herpes.
So that happens, does it?
Of course it happens.
And now I'm a little hurt because I don't get sent dick pics.
I'm sorry.
I know. Oh no,
You
no.
can put on a wig
I
and-
got a couple on Facebook. Yeah, you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Perfect.
so this is just sexual harassment at
Yes.
its finest.
Yeah.
Um,
Weinsteining.
Yeah. I get accused of not being able to write my own blog or design my own blog. I assume because I'm a woman and it's because women can't write or can't do web design or whatever it is.
No, it's because naturopaths have lower IQs. That's why they're.
Drives me fucking crazy. It's a free WordPress site. It's not even like it's fucking.
But by the way, I looked at your site. I'm like, damn, this site looks dope, Tom Heineber. How do we get a site like this? It's a free WordPress site.
And because when exactly. It's so ridiculous. You want to change something, you YouTube it. How do I change my free WordPress template?
Right.
And then you follow the YouTube instructions and you do it. It's not brain surgery.
Well, are you saying that women aren't capable of brain surgery? Because I'm detecting some implicit bias. So you get those kind of things.
Yeah, just the idea that I couldn't possibly run a free blog and make a blog look nice.
Right.
Because I'm a woman.
Because you're not a coding male.
Or that it would cost
Right.
tens of thousands of dollars to do something like this.
Right.
I've talked to male bloggers who do not get accused of
that.
this.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the idea that in order to do an interview like this, I must have a coach. I must have a speech coach. I must have a marketing person.
Let me say something about that, because I do a lot of interviews, and it's very rare that someone is as natural, unrehearsed, and fluent as you are in an interview setting, feeling as shitty as you do today.
Thanks.
So if that's a result of coaching, I want that fucking coach.
I think. Well, then I'm just lucky then.
Yeah, you're articulate. I mean, so this is all interpreted as you're damn evil.
Yeah. Or I must be. They think I'm employed by science-based medicine.
Right,
I'm
which
a
has
shill.
so much money to
Which has so much
employ people,
None, people.
because it's a for-profit entity that just is raking in the money.
Can I ask a sexist question?
Yes.
Why does naturopathy attract so many women, both on the provider side and the client side?
That's a really good question.
Great question, yeah.
Yeah, I think because medicine does a really shitty job of taking care of women.
You shut up, Britt
Sorry.
Hermes.
It's
Tell me
true.
more about that. I want to hear about this, because I don't disagree with you.
I think it's really common for women to feel like they're not heard by their male physician, to feel like they are belittled, to feel like they are making their symptoms up. They come in complaining of uterine cramping or fatigue or PMS symptoms, and it's brushed off as, exaggerated symptoms, or just take an ibuprofen and get over it.
And I agree with you 100%. We did a show on Lady Gaga's new documentary where we talked about her fibromyalgia and how she would be treated by the medical establishment if she wasn't a celebrity, right? They would call her crazy and the usual things that happens, and it's unacceptable, it's unexcusable. How about as a practitioner, though? Do you think that the medical system fails women as practitioners? Because one of Tom's questions was, why are there so many women naturopaths?
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of people who go into naturopathy have bad experiences with doctors.
Like you did.
Like I did.
Right.
And so I don't know that I know one story of a naturopath, actually, who didn't have a terrible experience with a doctor.
Right.
So this is always sort of an underlying driver.
Can I address these assholes for a second?
Go for it.
Okay. I didn't mean to call you assholes. I really didn't. I love you, Z-Pack, but I'm just being colloquial. You guys got to understand, we in Western medicine are absolutely culpable for the rise of witchcraft and wizardry, all right? You need to understand that until we treat our patients as partners, until we're paid on actual outcomes, until we practice team-based collaborative health 3.0, there's absolutely no reason why someone like Britt, who's presented with a dermatologist who's behaving like a dick, isn't going to react in a way that feels intuitively correct to her. The thing about naturopathy is they go in with really high idealism and the right intent and compassion. They spend time with patients. They connect. If that has a placebo effect for some people, that's wonderful. Where it becomes a problem is you have cancer. You have people saying don't vaccinate. You have an elevation of the pseudoscience and mystical, magical thinking, and rationalizations that, well, medications all came from many came from natural origins. Okay, great, let's study them and make them medications.
Right, like the Artemisia example. And
Right.
I just want to, I mean, cancer and the anti-vax are the easy examples to draw from, but I want to make sure your audience understands that it's also the common conditions. Naturopaths have treated teenage asthma patients with herbs and homeopathy, and these patients have died. There's been untreated bacterial meningitis in babies, and these babies have died. You have conditions like chickenpox becoming fatal and, causing and sterilization, major problems. So it's not just
cancer, and
it's not just the things that you hear about in the media all the time. It's all of these common conditions that get misdiagnosed, mistreated, that become very serious conditions that were totally treatable with real medicine.
Right. Wow. I mean, and again, I don't disagree. The thing is, I think a lot in the medical establishment want to villainize and demonize our naturopathic brethren. And they are brothers and sisters. The problem is it's another example of maybe not knowing what you don't know.
Exactly.
And here's the thing. In Western medicine, we have criminally overtreated people.
Yeah.
We've criminally medicalized a bunch of stuff. There's a lot of reasons why we suck really bad. I'm going to be the first to admit that. I stepped out of that full-time space to actually realize that. It doesn't mean that I go and embrace witchcraft.
Yeah.
It means that I think the relationship between people is important, the therapeutic alliance is important, the placebo effect does have a real effect, and how do you harness it without lying to patients, and then how do you therapeutically deliver what medicine is really good at doing? Study the hell out of it, and make it evidence-based and science-based both.
Right.
So that's why when I heard about you, and I discovered you early on, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this person is amazing. I couldn't imagine you existed, because first of all, I made all the implicit bias too. I was like, oh my gosh, she's a woman, she has a really good blog, and she is being a total dick. Meaning she's able to just say, fuck all y'all, this is what went down.
Pretty blunt.
And my implicit bias says, well, maybe women don't do that. It's wrong, obviously. But that's my unconscious conditioning. So when I saw this, I was like, this is remarkable. And I want to make sure I support you in any way that I can, but I also want to make sure I'm not wrong about you, that you're not out there like doing this for some ulterior motive, or that you're wrong about naturopathy or any of that. And all my own, I sound like an anti-vaxxer. I did my own research, Britt. Did my research, and you're on the up and up, girl, according to my research. So Tom, you got some comments from the peanut gallery?
I want to ask Britt, so I get into these conversations with people, like friends, girlfriends, and things, and I'm pretty dickish about naturopathy, and I'll just shut people down and tell them how stupid they're being. How should I change hearts and minds when I'm talking to these people? Because I hate them. Like, I really.
Well, that's your first
despise
problem.
them.
First of all, it just sounds like you're an asshole.
I am.
Give it up, Britt. That's fact.
You have to understand what their motivation is. So I think once you understand why the patient is seeking alternative medicine, then you can start to have a conversation about whether or not alternative medicine is an appropriate avenue for this person. But until you understand what's driving that person away from medicine and towards something alternative, you're not going to have a productive conversation.
So you have to talk to patients?
You have to, and you got to listen.
What?
You got to repeat things that they say.
But what if what they're saying is
listening?
What if it's stupid what they're saying? What do you do then? Do you mirror it back and say, yes, yeah, oh, homeopathy, the more dilute something is, the more potent
what
it
if
is,
they're
yeah.
stupid? Well, I guess it depends on what's your motivation? Are you trying to get them to change their mind, or are you just trying to belittle them?
No, I'm just trying to belittle them, usually.
Yeah.
That's Tom's job. He's Tommy belittlement.
I don't think you're going to have very many friends much longer.
You said, Or his friends will just be bigger and bigger assholes like me.
That's the truth, like Z.
When you said early on when we started this thing, you said you felt like you weren't acknowledged, that your suffering and your situation wasn't acknowledged by the dermatologist. I think that's 95% of it.
For sure.
I mean, I get a lot of private messages on Facebook. And I just found out, by the way, Facebook's new inbox just randomly doesn't show me a bunch of messages.
I hate Facebook.
It's really terrible.
Inbox.
So I went back to the old inbox and found about 1,000 messages that I hadn't seen.
You're kidding.
And I spent 2 hours this morning combing through, and I found a few pearls. For example, Facebook themselves reached out to me, and their own stupid ass algorithm wouldn't show me their own message when the Vegas shooting happened and said, we're really happy that you did a fundraiser using Facebook Live and raised $42,000 for UMC Hospital. We'd like to go to the press with this. Well, I would have liked to have seen that because I would have said yes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I didn't. So, but I get more things from people with chronic pain, with chronic disease.
I do too.
You do, right? Multiple paragraphs with the story. 95% of them want someone who has a position of some authority to say, I hear you.
Totally.
Your suffering is real.
Totally.
I wish I could help you. I can't give medical advice.
Totally.
But you are heard and acknowledged. And that's all it takes.
Totally.
Yeah.
And not always, but sometimes I think there also needs to be something offered to that patient.
Right.
You can't just take away alternative medicine. If you just take away alternative medicine and say it doesn't work, that's going to leave the patient feeling abandoned and scared and without that crutch that they were using to have hope. But you can replace it with things like just basic diet and lifestyle advice. I started suggesting that people would look into counseling, for example, find a support group.
Are you a fan of meditation, yoga, those kind of things?
I love yoga.
Yeah,
I've been doing yoga for a long time.
Yeah, so that's what I do with my patients.
Yeah. I think those are wonderful tools
Yeah.
to use. I think they're appropriate. I think they're safe.
Yeah.
And the likelihood of these tools harming the patient are very, very,
low.
very, very, very low.
So I like that balanced approach. I think one question I'd ask you is people will say, and you'll see this in the comments, I'm sure, well, it's the integration of East and West. We should just integrate the best of both. Where's the downside in that?
Do you know this famous quote where if you mix apple pie with cow pie, it doesn't make the apple pie any better?
That's my favorite thing I've ever heard. I've never heard that. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
it's a great one.
I've been schooled. I like that. So you're saying that, and why? Why is it a cow pie that poisons the whole dish? Is it because it's bringing in a magical thinking? Is it because it's lying to patients? What is it?
I think it's all of that.
Yeah.
It's costing the patient, it's wasting
Money.
the patient's time and money.
Yeah.
It's potentially taking away real therapies
Right.
for that patient and investing in magical thinking.
Right.
It's once you teach a patient that it's okay and that they should be engaging in magical thinking, I think it's a bit of a slippery slope.
Right.
So you go from using homeopathy for a self, resolving spider bite to then treating asthma to then treating something serious like cancer.
Yeah.
It's pretty actually easy to make that leap. And because you are then presenting things, something real and something not real, on the same playing field, and a patient or even a naturopath who's not trained in science and medicine can't tell
the
what
difference.
from what.
That's why I criticize Dr. Oz a lot.
Yeah.
Because he conflates really good medicine. He's a tremendous physician, tremendous communicator with Reiki and green
It's
tea.
very, very dangerous.
It's very
because
dangerous.
when you put Reiki on the same field as antibiotics,
right,
you can't tell.
You can't tell
you
which
can't tell
is
it
what.
apart.
And patients, especially who are looking for hope, will cling on to that.
Of course.
Can I tell you something?
Sure.
I think that the powers of pseudoscience, deception, the supplement industrial complex, all these things, and I've already criticized Western medicine, so I feel like that has to be said, but they should be very scared of people like you who have an innate vulnerability that you're willing to express, but also incredible courage and strength, and are articulate, smart, and have done both. They've studied the science now, and they've done the other stuff. And they're willing to go out in the world and put themselves at risk legally, financially, and also emotionally to tell their story. To me, you don't gain anything from this but a sense of feeling like you've made right something that has been wrong.
For sure.
And
For sure.
that's why I'm blown away by you, Britt
Thank
Hermes.
you.
Everybody should go look at your page and judge for yourself. As the anti-vaxxers say, do your own research and tell us what you think in the comments. Send us messages. It has been such a thrill
Thank you
to
so
have you
much.
on the show. Really an honor. Tom, any parting words?
Man, any naturopath that's preying on people with cancer can go straight to hell.
They
Like, I
can-
hope they just burn for all eternity. Not
what,
Britt. She did the right thing. But everybody else, kill yourself.
Let's say bye. Thank you for being so. You want to wave to the Z-Pack? Bye, guys. We love you. Thanks to Britt, and we out.
Just give me patience. Yeah.
Yo, Z-Pack! This episode is made possible by the generous sponsorship of Athena Health. Athena Health partners with hospital and ambulatory clients to drive results. They offer network-enabled medical record, revenue cycle management, patient engagement, care coordination, and population health services to build Health 3.0. Yo, get back to the work you love doing. Athena Health. Free up.